Have you ever wondered that inside every cell of your body lie atoms that once lived in the dying heart of a giant star? And if a star could speak, what story would it tell about the moment it transformed into a supernova, a blast brighter than an entire galaxy, yet also its final breath? Out there in the cosmos, some stars live quietly for billions of years, only to erupt in a single, violent instant that reshapes the universe around them. In this video, you'll hear the star's story in its own words. From the time it was nothing but a lonely cloud of dust, to the moment its iron heart collapsed and it exploded into a supernova, scattering gold, carbon, oxygen, and the elements that would one day become part of you. Watch until the end, because only when you complete this journey will you understand how the death of a star is really an invitation for new life to begin. I wasn't always radiant. Once I was invisible. I was dust, hydrogen, helium, and tiny traces of carbon, oxygen, and iron drifting through space at 260 degrees below zero. I passed wandering stars, drifting nebulae, and the faded remains of ancient supernovae. Parts of me once belonged to a star that died billions of years ago. Other pieces may have rested inside a rocky planet or a frozen comet. I was chaos, scattered memories of the universe. Then gravity whispered. From far away, disturbances, perhaps shock waves from a distant supernova or the brushing of colliding galaxies, rippled through the cloud where I wandered. That slight unevenness was enough to begin everything. Dense regions contracted faster, pulling dust and gas inward. I was drawn with countless trillions of atoms toward a single invisible point where density rose and temperature crept higher. Hundreds of thousands of years passed, then millions, in utter silence. No sound, no flash, only weight, pressure, and the ruthless patience of time. Until, at the very center of that collapsing cloud, a faint light flickered for the first time. Humans call it a protostar. To me, it was the first hint that I was about to become something more. But I wasn't strong enough to shine forever. Not yet. Before my first heart ignited, I still had to fight against my own collapsing weight. When I contracted enough, the temperature in my core surged past 10 million degrees Celsius. At that point, everything changed. Hydrogen nuclei, once gentle companions, were forced so close together that they fused. Every time 4 hydrogen nuclei merged into a single helium nucleus, a tiny bit of mass vanished, reappearing as energy. Much later, a tiny creature on a pale blue planet would write that as E equals mc squared. That was the moment I became a star. I entered what humans call the main sequence. Some of my siblings, lighter and calmer, could live for tens of billions of years. But I was much heavier than your sun, brighter, hotter, and destined for a far shorter life. From the outside, I looked peaceful, steady. But inside, a never-ending battle raged. Gravity trying to crush me inward, and the fire of nuclear fusion pushing outward. Between those two forces, I held my balance for tens to hundreds of millions of years. That was my youth. If planets circled me, then they were warmed by my light. Water might have flowed on their surfaces. Perhaps molecules trembled and joined together, dreaming of becoming something that would one day be called life. But no flame burns forever. The hydrogen fuel in my core, the youngest part of me, slowly ran out. And when that happened, I had only 2 choices: fade quietly, or turn myself into a blazing torch and accept an explosive end. The hydrogen in my core was nearly gone. Fusion weakened, the outward pressure faded, and gravity tightened its grip. My core shrank and heated rapidly. Above it, a shell of hydrogen began burning furiously. A ring of fire wrapped around a collapsing heart. My outer layers ballooned outward, cooled slightly, and turned red. I became a red giant. My surface expanded so far that I could swallow the orbits of any planets once circling me. Entire worlds vanished within my glowing body, never understanding what consumed them. Inside my contracting core, under crushing pressure, helium fused into carbon and oxygen, my second nuclear heart. Smaller stars could end their lives here. They gently shed their outer layers and leave behind a white dwarf, fading quietly. But I was too massive for a gentle ending. Gravity refused to let me rest. I kept burning through whatever fuel remained. After carbon came neon. After neon came oxygen. After oxygen came silicon. Each stage burned faster than the last. Hydrogen lasted tens to hundreds of millions of years, helium only a few million, carbon a few 100,000, and silicon sometimes just a few days. I became a colossal onion made of fire, an iron core in the center, wrapped in shells of elements. But that iron heart was my doom. Iron gives no energy. Iron steals it. And a star survives only by giving energy away, never by taking it in. Iron is a turning point. Fusing lighter elements into iron releases energy. But trying to fuse iron further consumes energy. A star can survive only by releasing energy, not by spending it. So when my core turned to iron, it meant I had reached the end of every nuclear game that could keep me alive. Gravity won completely. My core, enormous, as large as a planet, collapsed under its own weight. Electrons were crushed into protons, forming neutrons and releasing neutrinos. I became a forming neutron sphere, collapsing in agony. A teaspoon of my core would now weigh hundreds of millions of tons. The collapse happened in an instant. Matter fell inward, then rebounded violently off the newborn neutron core. Shock waves and an ocean of neutrinos blasted outward, and in a single flash, I exploded. What you see from your distant sky, a star suddenly brightening and slowly fading, is just the surface. Inside, physics at its most extreme was unfolding like a cosmic symphony. My light, for those brief days, outshone hundreds of billions of stars in my galaxy. Anyone watching from a distant world would see me appear suddenly, burn fiercely, then fade over weeks or months. They might record it, name it, fear it, but for me, it was simply my farewell. In a supernova, temperatures rise above 1 billion degrees. Atoms shake violently, capturing neutrons and breaking apart to form heavy elements the universe barely had before. The gold on someone's finger, the platinum in delicate instruments, the iodine inside living bodies, the uranium hidden deep within planetary crusts. My outer layers, rich with carbon, oxygen, silicon, calcium, were hurled into space at thousands of kilometers per second. They cooled and drifted outward, forming a supernova remnant, the kind that future creatures would photograph through telescopes and call beautiful. As for my core, it could become a rapidly spinning neutron star, casting beams of X-rays and gamma rays like a cosmic lighthouse. Or, if I were even heavier, it would collapse further and become a black hole, a place where even light cannot escape. Whatever my fate, my shattered body now roamed space once more, carrying new elements and new possibilities. And millions of years later, these fragments would fall together again, joining other drifting clouds, dreaming of becoming stars. If you've stayed with this star's journey until now, you've traveled through nearly the entire life cycle of a massive star. If the universe suddenly feels closer, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, listen to the star's final message, meant for you. If you're hearing these words, it means the atoms that once belonged to me have traveled very far. Some may have become fragments of a distant planet, frozen into the surface of a comet, or fallen into an ocean and entered the bodies of tiny creatures trying to understand their world. And one day, in a quiet room on a blue planet, a living being looked at a screen and listened to the story of a star, describing its final moment as a supernova. That being did not know that inside its eyes and inside its beating heart were atoms that once burned brightly in my core. I lived fast, shone fiercely, and died in an explosion. But my death was not an ending. It was simply the universe recycling itself. So if you ever feel small beneath the night sky, remember, you are not just looking at the stars. You are made of them. You've just traveled through the entire life cycle of a massive star, from a frigid cloud of dust collapsing under gravity, to its brilliant youth burning hydrogen, to its swelling as a red giant, and finally, the collapse of its iron heart and the supernova that scattered heavy elements across the universe. What's beautiful is that events like this created the carbon in your cells, the iron in your blood, and the calcium in your bones. You are, in the most literal sense, the child of stars. What struck you the most in this journey? The patience of a star lasting hundreds of millions of years. The brief, violent moment of the supernova that reshaped its surroundings. Or the realization that you are made of stardust. Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to read them. And if you want to continue this cosmic journey, I recommend the next video, the story of newborn clouds of dust rising from this explosion, preparing to become new stars. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the extraordinary stories of science ahead, where every star, every grain of dust, and each of us has a journey worth hearing.